Horrifying last moments of trainer Ava Caldwell caught by Orca. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The morning sun reflected off the clear blue water of the Marine Park's central tank, its shimmering surface belying the immense depth beneath. Ava Caldwell stood at the edge of the pool, her wetsuit clinging to her athletic frame as she prepared for the day's first training session. At 32, Ava was one of the park's most experienced trainers, known for her calm demeanor and the unshakable bond she shared with the Orcas. Her favorite, Kai, surfaced with a splash, his glossy black and white body slicing through the water. At over 10,000 pounds, Kai was the park's largest orca and its undisputed star. But to Ava, he was more than just a performer. He was a partner, a friend. "Morning, big guy," Ava called, her voice warm and cheerful. She tossed a fish into the air, and Kai leapt gracefully to catch it, his movements smooth and powerful. The audience of early parkgoers clapped and cheered, though Ava barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on Kai. The day unfolded in its usual rhythm, with Ava leading several training sessions and interacting with park visitors who eagerly watched her work with Kai. To the untrained eye, everything seemed perfect. Kai performed his routines flawlessly, earning applause and wide-eyed admiration from children and adults alike. But to Ava, something was off. Kai's movements, usually fluid and precise, seemed slightly hesitant. He surfaced slower than usual, and his clicks and whistles, sounds that Ava had come to recognize like a second language, felt strained. During one session, he ignored a simple hand signal for the first time in months, instead circling the tank in slow, deliberate laps. Ava frowned as she watched him. "What's going on with you today?" she murmured, crouching by the edge of the pool. She reached out her hand, and Kai swam over, nudging her palm with his massive snout. The gesture was familiar, comforting, but Ava couldn't shake the nagging feeling in her gut. After the session, Ava sought out her supervisor, Mark, in the staff lounge. Mark was a middle-aged man with a no-nonsense attitude and a deep loyalty to the park's operations. He listened patiently as Ava explained her concerns about Kai's behavior, nodding but offering little in the way of reassurance. "I get it, Ava," Mark said finally, setting down his coffee. "But we've seen this before. Sometimes they just have off days. As long as he's eating and performing, we don't have much to worry about." Ava bit her lip, frustration simmering beneath her calm exterior. "It's more than that, Mark. I've worked with Kai for years. I know when something's wrong." Mark sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Look, we've got a packed schedule today. The afternoon show is already sold out, and people are here to see him. Let's just get through the day, and if you're still worried tomorrow, we'll call the vet." Ava wanted to argue, but she knew it was pointless. The park's priorities were clear: ticket sales, visitor satisfaction, and maintaining their reputation. The well-being of the animals, while important, often took a back seat to the demands of the business. "Fine," she said, her tone clipped. "But I'm keeping a close eye on him." The hours leading up to the afternoon show passed in a blur. Ava went through the motions of her routine, her mind constantly returning to Kai. She reviewed his feeding logs, examined video footage from previous training sessions, and even consulted Mia, another trainer who occasionally worked with him. "He seemed fine yesterday," Mia said with a shrug. "A little quieter than usual, maybe, but nothing out of the ordinary." Ava nodded, though the unease in her chest didn't fade. She knew Kai better than anyone, and she couldn't ignore the subtle shifts in his behavior. But with the show fast approaching, there was little time to dwell on her concerns. By the time the audience filled the stands, the energy in the air was electric. Children leaned over the railings, their faces lit with excitement, while parents snapped photos and chatted animatedly. The park's announcer took to the microphone, hyping up the crowd with promises of an unforgettable performance. Ava stood behind the scenes, her heart pounding as she adjusted her wetsuit and prepared to take the stage. Kai waited in the holding pool, his massive dorsal fin cutting through the water like a blade. He was eerily still, his usual playful energy replaced by an almost unsettling calm. "You ready, buddy?" Ava called, trying to infuse her voice with confidence. Kai responded with a soft click, his head turning slightly to look at her. It wasn't much, but it was enough to steady her nerves. The show began with a burst of music and applause. Ava stepped onto the platform, waving to the crowd as Kai leapt out of the water, sending a cascade of droplets into the air. The audience erupted in cheers, and for a moment, Ava allowed herself to believe that everything would be fine. The performance started smoothly. Kai executed his routines with precision, his powerful leaps and graceful spins drawing gasps of admiration from the audience. Ava worked alongside him, guiding his movements with hand signals and vocal commands. The bond between them was palpable, a testament to years of trust and training. But halfway through the show, something changed. As Ava signaled for Kai to perform a breach, one of his most impressive tricks, he hesitated. His massive body floated just below the surface, his dorsal fin cutting through the water like a dark shadow. Ava repeated the signal, her brow furrowing. "Kai," she called, her voice steady but firm. "Breach." Kai's response was immediate, but not in the way she expected. He surged upward, his body twisting midair in a movement that was both breathtaking and chaotic. Instead of landing cleanly in the water, he slammed sideways, sending a massive wave crashing over the platform. Ava stumbled, her heart racing as the crowd let out a collective gasp. She turned to Kai, who was now circling the tank, his movements fast and erratic. "Something's wrong," she whispered, her pulse thundering in her ears. Mark's voice crackled over the headset she wore. "Ava, what's going on out there? The audience loves the splash, but we need to keep this under control." "I don't know," Ava replied, her voice tight. "He's not responding like he should. I need to bring him in." "Finish the routine," Mark ordered. "We've got a full house, and they're eating it up." Ava clenched her jaw, anger flaring in her chest. She knew Mark's priority was the show, but she couldn't ignore her instincts. Kai wasn't just an asset, he was a living, breathing creature, and something was clearly wrong. She stepped closer to the edge of the tank, her hand extended. "Kai," she called, her voice soft but firm. "Come here, buddy." The orca slowed, his massive head breaking the surface as he swam toward her. For a moment, their eyes met, and Ava felt a pang of sadness. Kai's gaze, usually so bright and curious, was clouded with something she couldn't quite identify: fear, confusion, or perhaps something deeper. "It's okay," she murmured, crouching down. "I'm here." The show concluded with a subdued finale, Ava guiding Kai through a series of simple tricks before signaling the end. The audience cheered, seemingly unaware of the tension that had gripped the performance. Ava stayed by the edge of the tank as the stands emptied, her mind racing. Mia approached, her expression concerned. "What happened out there?" she asked. He looked off. "I don't know," Ava admitted, running a hand through her damp hair. "But I'm not leaving until I figure it out." Mia hesitated, then placed a hand on Ava's shoulder. "Be careful," she said. "If something's wrong, you don't want to push him." Ava nodded, though her resolve was unshaken. Kai was more than just an orca, he was her partner, and she wouldn't abandon him. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the marine park. Most of the visitors had left, their laughter and excitement fading into the distance. The tanks and holding areas were quiet now, save for the occasional splash or chirp from the animals. Ava remained by Kai's tank, watching him as he floated near the surface. He seemed calmer now, his breath slow and measured. But Ava knew better than to assume all was well. The memory of his erratic behavior during the show lingered in her mind, a reminder of how quickly things could change. She crouched by the edge of the tank, her voice soft and soothing. "Hey, buddy," she murmured. "Talk to me. What's going on with you?" Kai responded with a low, rumbling click, his massive head tilting slightly as if trying to understand her. Ava smiled faintly, the familiar sound small comfort. She reached out, letting her hand rest on the water's surface. Kai swam closer, nudging her palm with his snout. "You're not yourself," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wish you could tell me what's wrong." Mark appeared behind her, his footsteps heavy against the concrete floor. "You're still here?" he asked, his tone a mix of annoyance and concern. Ava didn't look up. "I told you, something's not right with him." Mark sighed, crossing his arms. "Ava, you've been working all day. Go home. Get some rest. We'll have the vet check him out in the morning. And if something happens tonight..." Ava countered, her gaze still fixed on Kai. "He's not just an animal, Mark. He's family." Mark hesitated, the tension in his posture softening slightly. "I get it," he said finally, "but you can't take this all on yourself. We have protocols for a reason." Ava stood, turning to face him. "Protocols don't mean anything if we're not listening to what they're trying to tell us," she said. "I'm staying, at least until I know he's okay." Mark studied her for a moment, then nodded. Fine. But if you're staying, keep your headset on. If anything happens, call me. Thank you, Ava said, her voice firm but grateful. The park's lights dimmed as the evening deepened, leaving the tanks illuminated by soft, underwater lighting. Ava remained by Kai's tank, her presence a constant reassurance. She reviewed her notes, comparing his behavior over the past week to what she'd observed during the day. The patterns were subtle, but undeniable. Kai had been eating less, his movements slower and less precise. His vocalizations, usually a vibrant mix of clicks and whistles, had grown quieter. It was as if something was weighing on him, pulling him down. Mia joined her after finishing her rounds, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. You're still here, she said, her voice tinged with both admiration and concern. Of course, Ava replied, glancing up. I couldn't leave him like this. Mia sat beside her, taking a sip of her coffee. You've always had a way with him, she said. It's like he trusts you more than anyone else. Ava smiled faintly. Maybe, but I feel like I'm missing something. Like he's trying to tell me something, and I'm not hearing it. Mia nodded thoughtfully. Animals have a way of sensing things we can't, she said. Maybe it's not just about him. Maybe it's about everything. The hours passed slowly, the quiet of the park broken only by the soft sounds of the water and the occasional hum of machinery. Ava kept a close eye on Kai, her mind racing with possibilities. She considered everything from illness to environmental stress, but nothing seemed to fit perfectly. Around midnight, Kai began to move more actively, his massive body slicing through the water with purpose. Ava stood, her pulse quickening as she watched him. His movements were sharp and deliberate, almost as if he were agitated. Kai, she called, stepping closer to the edge of the tank. Kai let out a series of sharp clicks, his dorsal fin cutting through the water as he circled the tank. He breached suddenly, his massive body crashing back into the water with a force that sent waves rippling across the surface. Ava stumbled back, her heart pounding. What's going on? She murmured. Mia, who had been dozing in a nearby chair, jolted awake at the sound. What happened? She asked, hurrying over. I don't know, Ava said, her voice tight. He's acting out. The commotion drew the attention of the night staff, who gathered cautiously near the tank. Mark arrived moments later, his expression tense. What's going on? He demanded. He's agitated, Ava said, her gaze never leaving Kai. Something's wrong. Mark frowned, glancing at the Orca as he continued to move erratically. We need to sedate him, he said. If he's out of control, he's a danger to everyone. No, Ava said firmly. Sedating him could make it worse. Let me handle this. Mark hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. You've got 5 minutes, he said. If he doesn't calm down, we're stepping in. Ava nodded, stepping closer to the tank. Kai, she called, her voice steady. It's okay. I'm here. Kai slowed, his massive head breaking the surface as he let out a low, rumbling click. Ava knelt by the edge of the tank, her hand reaching out to him. Come on, buddy, she said softly. Talk to me. Kai swam closer, his movements cautious but deliberate. He nudged her hand with his snout, his clicks growing quieter. Ava felt a surge of relief, her heart steadying as she stroked his sleek skin. For a moment, everything seemed calm. The night staff watched in silence, their tension easing as Kai settled near Ava. But then, without warning, he lunged. Ava barely had time to react as Kai's powerful jaws closed around her arm, pulling her into the water with a force that took her breath away. The world blurred as she was dragged beneath the surface, her mind racing with shock and fear. The staff erupted into chaos, their shouts echoing through the park. Mark grabbed the radio, his voice urgent. We need backup at Tank 3. No. Mia screamed, running to the edge of the tank. Ava, she cried, her voice breaking. Underwater, Ava struggled against Kai's grip, her movements frantic but controlled. Her training kicked in, her mind focused on survival. She knew the risks of panicking. She had to stay calm, even as fear clawed at her. Kai, she thought, her heart pounding. Let me go. Please. The water churned violently as Ava fought to free herself, her lungs burning from the lack of air. Kai's grip was firm but not crushing, as though he wasn't trying to harm her, but didn't understand the strength he was using. Her mind raced, cycling between fear and the deep connection she'd always felt with him. Above the surface, chaos reigned. Mia frantically shouted instructions to the night staff, while Mark barked orders into his radio. Several staff members threw ropes and flotation devices into the tank, their efforts hindered by the sheer size and power of the Orca. "We need to distract him," Mark yelled, his voice sharp. "Get the emergency food bucket." Mia sprinted toward the storage room, heart pounding as she grabbed a large bucket filled with Kai's favorite treats. She returned to the edge of the tank, throwing handfuls of fish into the water in an attempt to lure Kai away from Ava. "Kai, over here," Mia shouted, her voice desperate. Underwater, Ava's vision blurred as her oxygen supply dwindled. She felt Kai's grip loosen slightly, and she seized the opportunity to wriggle free. Kicking hard, she propelled herself toward the surface, her lungs screaming for air. When she finally broke through, she gasped, the cool night air filling her chest. The staff erupted in relief, their shouts a chaotic mixture of instructions and questions. Ava barely had time to register their voices before Kai surged upward, his massive body sending a wave crashing over her. The force knocked her back under, and the struggle resumed. This time, Ava felt a shift in Kai's movements. He wasn't thrashing or attacking, he was holding her, almost cradling her, as if he didn't want her to leave. His clicks and whistles were softer now, tinged with an emotion Ava couldn't quite place. Kai, she thought, her panic giving way to a profound sadness. "What's going on with you?" On the surface, the staff's attempts to distract Kai finally paid off. The scent of the fish caught his attention, and he released Ava, swimming toward the bait with slow, deliberate movements. Ava surfaced again, coughing and gasping as Mia and another trainer helped pull her onto the platform. "You're okay," Mia said, her voice trembling. "You're okay." Ava nodded weakly, her body trembling from the adrenaline coursing through her. She turned to look at Kai, who was now circling the tank, his movements slower but still restless. Her heart ached as she watched him, the bond they had shared now shrouded in confusion and pain. Mark crouched beside her, his expression a mix of anger and concern. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded. "You could have been killed." "He wasn't trying to hurt me," Ava said, her voice hoarse but firm. "Something's wrong with him. I need to figure out what." Mark shook his head, frustration etched across his face. "You're done for tonight. Go home, Ava. That's an order." Reluctantly, Ava allowed herself to be escorted to the staff lounge, where Mia wrapped her in a towel and handed her a cup of hot tea. The warmth seeped into her hands, but it did little to ease the chill that had settled in her chest. "What happened out there?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's never done anything like that before." Ava stared into her tea, her thoughts swirling. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I don't think it was aggression. It felt different. Like he was trying to tell me something." Mia frowned, her brow furrowed. What could he possibly be trying to say? Ava shook her head, frustration mounting. "I don't know. But I have to find out." The rest of the night was a blur. Ava couldn't sleep, her mind replaying the incident over and over. She thought about Kai's restless movements, his uncharacteristic behavior, and the way he had held her underwater. Every detail seemed like a piece of a puzzle she couldn't solve. By morning, she was back at the park, her determination outweighing her exhaustion. Mark was less than thrilled to see her, but he didn't argue, knowing it was pointless. Ava went straight to Kai's tank, where he was swimming in slow, deliberate circles. He seemed calmer than the night before, but the tension in his movements was still evident. "Hey, big guy," Ava called softly, leaning against the railing. "I'm here." Kai surfaced, his massive head tilting slightly as he regarded her. His amber eyes, so full of intelligence and emotion, seemed to pierce through her. Ava spent the day observing Kai, taking detailed notes and reviewing footage from the previous weeks. She consulted the park's vet, who conducted a thorough examination and found no signs of illness or injury. The lack of answers only deepened Ava's frustration. That evening, as the park emptied and the lights dimmed, Ava returned to the tank. She sat cross-legged on the platform, her gaze fixed on Kai as he floated nearby. "I don't know what's going on with you," she said softly, "but I'm not giving up on you." Kai let out a low rumble, his body shifting slightly. It wasn't a vocalization Ava recognized. It was deeper, more resonant, almost like a sigh. Ava leaned forward, her voice steady. "If there's something you need, something I'm not seeing, show me. I'm listening." As the hours passed, Ava began to notice subtle changes in Kai's behavior. He seemed to respond more to her voice, his movements slower and more deliberate. It was as if he understood her plea and was trying to communicate in his own way. At one point, Kai surfaced near the edge of the tank, his head breaking the water just inches from Ava. She reached out, her hand hovering above his snout. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you?" she whispered. Kai clicked softly, the sound reverberating through the water. Ava's heart swelled with a mix of hope and sadness. Whatever was going on, she was determined to figure it out for both their sakes. As the night deepened, Ava's exhaustion began to creep in, but she refused to leave Kai's side. Something about his behavior was both captivating and heartbreaking, and she felt an unshakable responsibility to understand him. The park was quiet now, with only the occasional hum of machinery breaking the stillness. Kai floated near the surface, his amber eyes locked on Ava. His gaze was penetrating, almost pleading, and Ava felt her heart tighten. She reached out, her fingers skimming the water's surface. "What are you trying to say, Kai?" she murmured. "I'm here. I'm listening." Kai responded with a series of low clicks, his massive head tilting slightly. The sound was softer than usual, more subdued, and Ava felt a pang of sadness. She had spent years building a bond with him, learning to understand his unique personality and quirks. But now, in this moment of need, she felt helpless. Mia appeared quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Ava, sitting down beside her on the platform. "You're still here," she said, her voice soft. "Of course I am," Ava replied, taking a sip of the steaming coffee. "I can't just walk away." Mia nodded, her gaze drifting to Kai. "He's calmer now," she observed. "Whatever was upsetting him, it seems to be fading." "Maybe," Ava said, though her tone was uncertain. "But it's not just about tonight. Something's been off for days. I should have seen it sooner." "You can't blame yourself," Mia said gently. "You've done everything you can. More than anyone else would." Ava didn't respond, her focus still on Kai. The guilt she felt was overwhelming, but it only strengthened her resolve. She wouldn't stop until she understood what was going on. As the first light of dawn began to streak across the sky, Ava noticed a shift in Kai's behavior. He surfaced more frequently, his clicks and whistles growing louder and more insistent. It was as if he were trying to draw her attention to something specific. "What is it, Kai?" Ava asked, standing and stepping closer to the edge of the tank. "What do you want me to see?" Kai let out a sharp, high-pitched whistle, then dove beneath the surface. He swam in a wide arc before returning to Ava, his movements deliberate and purposeful. Mia watched from the sidelines, her brow furrowed. "It's like he's leading you," she said. "But where?" Ava crouched by the water, her heart racing. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm going to find out." With Mia's help, Ava prepared to enter the tank. She donned her wetsuit, securing the straps with practiced ease. Mia handed her a headset and safety tether, her expression a mix of concern and encouragement. "Are you sure about this?" Mia asked. "After what happened last time?" "I'm sure," Ava said firmly. "He's trying to tell me something, and I need to listen." Mia nodded reluctantly, tightening the tether. "Be careful," she said. "I'll be right here." Ava slipped into the water, the cool temperature sending a shiver through her body. Kai swam over immediately, his massive form gliding effortlessly through the tank. Ava reached out, her hand brushing against his smooth, rubbery skin. "Okay, big guy," she said softly. "Show me what you need." Kai responded with a low rumble, then began to swim slowly toward the far side of the tank. Ava followed, her movements steady and deliberate. Kai paused near the viewing window, circling in place before diving to the bottom. Ava hesitated, then took a deep breath and followed him. The tank's depth was disorienting, the water darker and colder as she descended. Kai hovered near the bottom, his clicks and whistles growing louder. "What are you showing me?" Ava thought, her heart pounding. She scanned the area, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. It was then that she noticed something unusual, a small, shiny object partially buried in the sand. Ava swam closer, her fingers brushing against it. The object was metallic, its surface smooth and polished. Ava's pulse quickened as she retrieved the object, holding it up to the light. It appeared to be a small device about the size of a cell phone, with blinking lights and intricate wiring. "What is this?" she wondered aloud. Surfacing quickly, Ava handed the device to Mia, who was waiting anxiously by the edge of the tank. "What is this?" Mia asked, turning the object over in her hands. I don't know, Ava admitted, pulling herself onto the platform. But Kai led me to it. He wanted me to find it. Mia frowned, her gaze shifting to Kai. Do you think it has something to do with his behavior? Maybe, Ava said, her mind racing. But we need to figure out what it is and fast. The device was taken to the park's control room, where Raj, one of the tech specialists, examined it closely. Raj was a meticulous and brilliant technician, known for his ability to solve complex problems with ease. This is strange, Raj said, his brow furrowed as he studied the device. It looks like some kind of tracking or monitoring system. But it's not ours. I've never seen anything like this before. Could it be interfering with Kai? Ava asked, her voice urgent. It's possible, Raj said. If it's emitting signals, it could be affecting his behavior. Orcas are highly sensitive to sound and electromagnetic frequencies. Ava felt a surge of anger. Who would do this, she demanded. Why would anyone plant a device like this in the tank? Raj shook his head. I don't know, but I'll find out. As the day wore on, the tension in the park grew. Ava couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something much bigger than they'd anticipated. She returned to Kai's tank, sitting quietly by the edge as she watched him swim. Kai seemed calmer now, his movements more relaxed. Ava reached out, her fingers skimming the water. We found it, she said softly. Thank you for showing me. Kai responded with a low click, his massive head surfacing near her hand. Ava smiled, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and gratitude. We'll figure this out, she said. I promise. As Ava sat by the tank, her fingers tracing the edge of the platform, a new sense of clarity washed over her. Kai had trusted her enough to guide her to the strange device, despite the tension and confusion that had clouded their bond. She was determined to uncover the truth, not just for him but for all the animals under her care. Raj worked tirelessly in the control room, dismantling the device and analyzing its components. Meanwhile, Mia joined Ava at the tank, her expression a mixture of worry and curiosity. Raj said the device might have been emitting ultrasonic frequencies, Mia said, sitting beside Ava. That could explain Kai's erratic behavior. Orcas rely on echolocation, so something like that could really mess with him. Ava nodded, her gaze fixed on Kai as he floated near the surface. It makes sense, she said. But the real question is, who put it there? And why? Mia hesitated, her brow furrowing. Do you think it could have been sabotage, she asked. Maybe someone trying to discredit the park? It's possible, Ava admitted, her mind racing. But I don't want to jump to conclusions. We need evidence. The day passed slowly, tension hanging heavy in the air. Kai's behavior continued to improve, his movements more relaxed, and his clicks returning to their usual rhythmic pattern. Ava spent every moment she could by his side, offering him reassurance and observing him closely. By evening, Raj had pieced together enough information about the device to share his findings. He gathered Ava, Mia, and Mark in the control room, his face grim. This isn't just some random piece of tech, Raj began, holding up the disassembled components. It's a high-grade tracking and monitoring system. Whoever put this in the tank knew exactly what they were doing. Mark frowned, his arms crossed. Are you saying this was intentional? Absolutely, Raj replied. The device was designed to emit low-frequency signals, likely to interfere with Kai's echolocation. It's no wonder he was acting out. It must have been disorienting and painful. Ava felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. How long do you think it's been there, she asked. It's hard to say, Raj admitted. But judging by the wear and tear, I guess at least a few weeks. Mia's eyes widened. Weeks? That's horrifying. He's been suffering this whole time. Mark's expression darkened as he processed the information. This is a serious breach of security, he said. We need to report this to the authorities and figure out how it happened. And we need to make sure it doesn't happen again, Ava added, her voice firm. Kai's been through enough. Raj nodded. I've already started reviewing the park surveillance footage. If someone planted this, we'll find them. Mia placed a comforting hand on Ava's shoulder. We'll get to the bottom of this, she said. For Kai. Ava nodded, her resolve unwavering. He trusted me, she said softly. I won't let him down. The next morning, Raj uncovered a crucial piece of evidence. Footage of an unknown individual entering the restricted area near Kai's tank late at night, just days before the device was discovered. The figure was dressed in dark clothing, their face obscured by a hood. "This has to be our saboteur," Raj said, pointing to the screen. They knew exactly where to go and what to do. This wasn't random. Mark leaned closer, his jaw tightening. "Can we identify them?" "I'm working on enhancing the footage," Raj replied, "but it's going to take time." Ava stared at the screen, her mind racing. Who would do this, she wondered aloud. And why target Kai? As the investigation continued, Ava focused on rebuilding her bond with Kai. She spent hours in the water with him, reinforcing their trust and helping him recover from the stress he had endured. Kai responded with enthusiasm, his playful energy returning as he leapt and twirled in the tank. "You're amazing," Ava said one afternoon as Kai breached the surface, splashing her with water. "You've been through so much, and you're still the strongest, bravest guy I know." Kai let out a series of cheerful clicks, his massive body gliding through the water with ease. Ava laughed, the sound light and genuine, a rare moment of joy in the midst of the turmoil. Mia watched from the platform, a smile tugging at her lips. "He's really bouncing back," she said. "You've done an incredible job, Ava." Ava shrugged, her gaze softening as she looked at Kai. "He's the one who's incredible," she said. "I'm just lucky to be a part of his world." That evening, Raj called Ava to the control room, his voice filled with urgency. "I've got something," he said. The enhanced footage gave us a partial ID on the intruder. Ava's heart raced as she joined Raj, Mia, and Mark in front of the monitor. The screen displayed a clearer image of the saboteur, their hood slipping slightly to reveal part of their face. Raj ran the image through the park's employee database, and within moments a match appeared. "It's one of our own," Raj said grimly. "A maintenance worker named Eric Cole. He's been with the park for about a year." Mark's expression darkened. "I'll handle this," he said, his tone sharp. "Security will detain him for questioning." Ava felt a mix of anger and betrayal. "Why would he do this?" she asked. "What could he possibly gain from hurting Kai?" "We'll find out," Mark said. "But first, we make sure he can't do any more damage." Eric was apprehended later that night, his protestations falling on deaf ears as he was escorted to the park security office. Ava, Mark, and Raj joined the meeting, their expressions grim as they faced the man who had endangered Kai. "Why?" Ava demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "Why would you do this?" Eric hesitated, his gaze darting between them. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I was paid," he admitted. "A private group offered me a lot of money to plant the device. They wanted data on Kai, his behavior, his echolocation patterns, everything." Mark's jaw tightened. "Who paid you?" he asked. Eric hesitated again, then muttered, "An independent research firm. They said it was for a study." Ava's hands clenched into fists. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she said, her voice rising. "Kai was in pain for weeks because of you." Eric looked down, shame flickering across his face. "I didn't know it would hurt him," he said quietly. "I was just doing my job." The authorities were notified, and Eric was taken into custody. The device and all related evidence were handed over for further investigation, ensuring that those responsible would be held accountable. For Ava, the ordeal was far from over. While justice was being served, the emotional toll of the experience weighed heavily on her. She spent every moment she could with Kai, determined to make up for the pain he had endured. "You're safe now," she said one evening as she stroked his sleek skin. "I promise, nothing like this will ever happen to you again." Kai responded with a soft click, his gaze steady and trusting. Ava smiled, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. Despite everything, their bond had only grown stronger. In the days that followed Eric's arrest, the park began implementing new security measures to ensure that no one could compromise the safety of the animals again. Surveillance cameras were upgraded, access to restricted areas was tightened, and the staff underwent additional training to detect signs of stress in the orcas. Ava threw herself into her work, dedicating every ounce of her energy to Kai's recovery. She could see the difference in him now, his strength returning, his movements smooth and confident. The haunted look in his eyes had faded, replaced by the familiar spark of curiosity and intelligence that had always defined him. "You're incredible," Ava said one morning as she swam alongside Kai, her hand brushing against his side. "You've been through so much, and you're still here, still fighting." Kai responded with a joyful leap, his sleek body arcing high above the water before crashing back down in a wave of foam. Ava laughed, her heart lifting at the sight. This was the Kai she knew, the Kai she had fought so hard to protect. The investigation into the research firm that had hired Eric revealed a tangled web of greed and exploitation. The firm, operating under the guise of legitimate scientific research, had been collecting data on captive orcas to develop technologies for unethical purposes. Their actions sparked outrage in the scientific community and beyond, leading to widespread calls for stricter regulations on wildlife research. For Ava, the news was bittersweet. While she was relieved that justice was being served, she couldn't shake the guilt of not realizing sooner that Kai had been in distress. She often replayed the events in her mind, wondering if there had been signs she had missed, moments when she could have intervened. "You did everything you could," Mia told her one evening as they sat by the tank, watching Kai play with a floating toy. "You listened to him when no one else did. That's why he's still here." Ava nodded, her gaze fixed on Kai. "I just wish it hadn't come to this," she said. "He deserves so much more than what we can give him here." The incident reignited Ava's passion for advocating for the orcas. She began speaking out about the challenges of captivity, using her platform to raise awareness about the physical and emotional toll it took on these intelligent, social creatures. Her words resonated with audiences, sparking debates about the ethics of keeping orcas in marine parks. Kai became a symbol of resilience, his story inspiring people around the world. Visitors to the park often asked about him, drawn by the tale of the trainer who had risked everything to protect her orca partner. Ava shared their bond openly, hoping to inspire others to see orcas as more than just performers. "They're not here for our entertainment," she said during a public talk. "They're living, feeling beings with their own needs and desires. We owe it to them to do better." Months passed, and the park's management began exploring options for Kai's future. Ava pushed for his relocation to a sanctuary, a safe, enclosed area in the ocean where he could live more freely while still receiving care. It was a challenging process, filled with logistical hurdles and bureaucratic red tape, but Ava refused to give up. "Kai deserves a life where he can truly thrive," she told Mark during a meeting. "He's given so much to this park, and it's time we give something back." Mark, who had softened considerably since the incident, nodded thoughtfully. "I'll see what we can do," he said. "But it's going to take time." "I'll wait," Ava replied. "As long as it takes." In the meantime, Ava continued to work with Kai, cherishing every moment they spent together. Their bond, already strong, had deepened in ways Ava hadn't thought possible. She marveled at his intelligence, his playfulness, and his capacity for trust despite everything he had endured. One afternoon, as Ava sat by the tank, Kai surfaced and rested his head on the platform beside her. Ava smiled, leaning down to stroke his snout. "Hey, big guy," she said softly. "You know we're going to get you out of here, right? Somewhere you can swim as far as you want, feel the ocean currents, and just be free." Kai let out a low, rumbling click, his eyes meeting hers. Ava felt a lump rise in her throat, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She had spent years working with Kai, and the thought of saying goodbye filled her with both sadness and hope. The day of Kai's relocation finally arrived. A team of marine biologists and veterinarians worked alongside the park staff to prepare Kai for the journey. The sanctuary, located in a remote bay off the coast, was a place where Kai could live as naturally as possible while still receiving care. The process was meticulous, every step designed to minimize stress for Kai. Ava stayed by his side the entire time, speaking to him in soothing tones and stroking his sleek skin. "You're going to love it," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's everything you've ever deserved." Kai responded with a soft click, his body relaxed as he was gently guided into the transport tank. Ava walked alongside him, her hand resting on the edge of the tank as they made their way to the waiting transport truck. The journey to the sanctuary was long but uneventful, the team working tirelessly to ensure Kai's comfort and safety. When they arrived, Ava's breath caught at the sight of the bay, a vast expanse of clear, turquoise water surrounded by rocky cliffs. It was a far cry from the concrete walls of the park, a place where Kai could finally experience a semblance of freedom. The team carefully released Kai into the water, their movements coordinated and precise. Ava watched from the shore, heart pounding as Kai swam out into the bay. For a moment, he hesitated, his massive form silhouetted against the horizon. Then, with a powerful leap, he breached the surface, his body twisting gracefully in the air. The sight brought tears to Ava's eyes. "You're free," she whispered. "You're finally free." Over the following weeks, Ava visited the sanctuary regularly, monitoring Kai's adjustment and assisting the team with his care. He adapted quickly, exploring his new environment with a mix of curiosity and joy. Ava often watched from a boat, marveling at his strength and grace as he swam through the open water. Her advocacy work continued, her voice growing louder as she pushed for more sanctuaries and better protections for captive marine animals. Kai's story became a rallying cry, inspiring others to join the fight for change. He's not just an orca, Ava said during a televised interview. He's a reminder of what we can achieve when we listen, when we care, and when we fight for what's right. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava stood on the shore of the sanctuary, watching Kai swim in the distance. The water shimmered with the colors of the sunset, a breathtaking backdrop to a moment that felt almost sacred. Kai surfaced near the shore, letting out a series of clicks that echoed across the bay. Ava smiled, her heart swelling with love and pride. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying over the water. "For trusting me. For teaching me. For everything." Kai responded with a joyful leap, his powerful body slicing through the air before crashing back into the water. Ava laughed, the sound light and free, as she realized that this was just the beginning, a new chapter in a story that would inspire generations to come.